Welcome everyone to another Kings of War Tournament Report. I'm Visibly Riley, and today we will continue our journey into Cascade Clash 2018, an event I attended in Portland, Oregon. After the crushing defeat of in Game 2 against the Varangar, I'm sitting on an okay 17 out of 40 points, which puts me solid center of the pack, but on the losing side, which means I ended up playing against a newer player named Andrew in his Kingdoms of Men. Now, some of you might notice that he has not a lick of paint on his models. In fact, they're all sprue gray. But you know, if I remember correctly, excuse me, he just finished this army maybe 2 or 3 days before the event. So I think that's something to be proud of. You know, just getting your stuff together and getting out there the first you can, trial by fire. Very proud. Here's his list. Again, no allies. Now, there were allies allowed in this tournament, just none of us brought them. He, as a rough approximation of his list, he has 2 legions of militia mob, he has a horde of berserkers, 4 regiments of knights, 1 with the caterpillar potion, 3 troops of mounted sergeants, 3 siege artillery, 2 BSBs, 1 with the lute, and 1 with Banner the Griffin on a horse. He has a wizard with lightning bolt, no Pegasus, that's actually a horse, I made a mistake there, and the inspiring talisman. Now, I actually kind of like this list because it harkens back to a concept that I was made aware of in Warhammer, or in the Warhammer Fantasy days, called the Village Idiot, which was one of my favorite things to do in 7th edition. The idea was, especially when you're playing Empire armies, but it also worked for Checkerboard Skaven and stuff like that, you would just move forward with your units, and especially with Empire, with their detachment system, you would present your opponent with a question, right? Which was, you charge me, and you either kill my unit, leave the unit okay, or break the unit and run it down. All 3 of these are fine to me. If you kill the unit, you overrun into one of my units, maybe, or you overrun right in front of it. Both of those are fine. If you don't kill the unit, I get free. That's just free points for me. And then if you overrun the unit or choose to adjust your facing, it doesn't really matter, because I presented you with so many units that I can easily get another charge, flank charges, etc. onto you. So I like that idea of an army, and I think this Kingdoms of Men army is sort of something back to that, where you have the 2 legions and a horde, which is a huge amount of bodies and nerve value. And behind them, you've got the 4 regiments of knights, who are okay combatants. They're a little hard to take down. They've got Thunderous 2, melee 3+, the 16 attacks. But when you mix them along with the militia, because now I can spend 2 turns just feeding you legions, right, while walking around with my knights to your flank and rear, it's sort of like playing an undead army, but instead of surge, you've got siege artillery. So, you know, a lot of people like to poo-poo on Kingdoms of Men. I'm not sure they're all that bad. Maybe just a points adjustment. Here we see the deployment for Game 3. We ended up playing loot, and in the middle you'll see those 3 yellow tokens are our loot tokens. And this is about half the table, I would say, maybe 3/4 of the table, or 3/5. I actually placed the first token, the one on the right is in the center, obviously. I placed that first token on the left on that hill, because he had artillery and knights, and I thought it'd be nice to be shielded while still scoring. My opponent then measured out and went, I think in between this is an exact 20 or 12-inch mark, as in those 2 tokens were first, originally exactly 24, and turned out it was true, so he thought it'd be great to just place it there, and who am I to argue? Especially with Ogres, I love it being able to just condense my forces down, especially against a numerically superior foe. So, with the Ogres, starting with the Ogres left to right, we've got the Boomers with Fire Oil on the left there. Next to them, behind that wall, we've got the Horde of Warriors. Behind them is Nomar. Then we've got Grakagamok's Chosen there. Next to them is the Lute Warlock with, again, Drain Life. We've got all 3 regiments of Braves just in a row. We've got the Banner the Griffin, Drain Life, Warlock. Behind the middle one, the far right, we've got Grakagamok. And slightly off frame here, we've got the last horde of Boomers and the Goblin Big Gits on the right there. The Boomers are just perfectly within Grok's 9, so that's my bubble. Now on the left here, my opponent is fully deployed. He's got, from left to right, the first Legion of Militia, then the, the Horde of Berserkers, and then the next Legion of Militia. Behind them are the 3 pieces of siege artillery. Then we've got the 3 troops of mounted sergeants, to the right of them is the mounted wizard, and then behind them the four regiments of knights, the ones in the center behind that dark green piece of felt, which is just difficult terrain, not woods. Excuse me. Have the potion of the caterpillar. That dark model to their right is the BSB, the mounted BSB with Banner of the Griffin, and over on the left somewhere is the loot. The loot BSB. I'm not sure exactly where it is over there. I think it might be behind the Berserker Braves, or just Berserkers. Berserkers? Yeah, sure. The only part I don't like about his deployment here is, I actually just don't like this deployment because one, why is his lightning bolt wizard on the front lines? I don't understand that at all. But secondly, I think he would have been better served putting the 2 legions of militia with the berserkers or barbarians or whatever they're called in the center of the board, and then putting the knights behind them. If he had done that, or even done a refuse flank on him, because if he had done that, he makes it so he dictates where we're fighting. He can put their artillery somewhere else to just get shots. Who cares if they die? And then put his heroes sort of interspersed between them, and maybe run the wizard with the 3 mounted sergeants just around a flank to get into my backfield. I think that this would have been a much more effective way of dealing with, especially my army. I've got an okay amount of shooting, but I split up my boomers, so he could see that they weren't going to be deployed together, especially as I think I deployed the warriors and Grok's Braves first, so there wasn't enough room for 2 hordes to be over there anyway. And anyway, that's just my takeaway. But moving on to turn 1, we see here I actually got a charge off with my Goblin Big Git into his wizard. This is oof, that little Hall's cop drop there marks off our waivers because we had so many in this game, so many units that we thought that used the most obvious token we had. So I end up getting 1 wound with this Goblin Big Git onto the wizard, which is unfortunate for him. Here in the center, we see the rest of the Ogre movement, and I actually forgot to mention this. He went first and just sort of moved forward with a little bit, which, that's not great. But he does hit with 2 out of 3 of the artillery, so sort of flashbacks back to the Chaos Dwarf turn, or game 1. And gets 11 wounds onto one of my regiment of Braves and just blows it up turn 1. So, artillery, sometimes it wrecks your day. But I fire back. I moved over. I end up shooting, or I get that boomer horde on the right, slightly in range of shooting those mounted sergeants, but out of range of getting charged by knights. And I end up putting, I think, 7-ish wounds with the boomers alone. And then fire off a quick lightning bolt at them. But I end up rolling double 1s for that break check. I don't think they were on double 1s, but I do double 1 it. So that's unfortunate for me. Now, I did fire a lightning bolt off, just nice pot shot. I think it was only lightning bolt 4 onto these mounted sergeants on the left and get 3 wounds and waiver them. So, I got the double 1s in the middle there, but I got a waiver on the wizard and a waiver on those mounted sergeants. So I'm feeling pretty good right now. I could do with a little less artillery hitting me, but that's fine. It's going to happen. So, yeah, this is, just another shot of the boomers moving forward. I didn't get a lot of shots of my army, and in fact, I didn't end up taking an army shot at this event because the lighting was just so bad. I couldn't do it. I didn't see the point in it. But I am actually pretty happy with how this army turned out, considering it was only a 4-week project. The only problem was really these models came pre-assembled and had a lot of mold lines that their previous owners hadn't cleaned off that I didn't notice until I'd already started painting, so that's unfortunate, but happens. Over here we see the rest of the Ogre movement on the left. I move forward with pretty aggressively with my boomers, just because he can only charge 10, and I'm not really worried about it. I'm just going to back off and shoot at him until, he dies or charges me. Don't really care which. I moved no more into the middle to give his inspiring onto my boomers in case something weird happens, and onto his best friends next to him. And the idea here was to cede the center to his knights, just sort of let them roll into me, while I take care of the left with my heavy combat units. And my idea was that I'll probably net a couple of the knight units or the mounted sergeants just by natural attrition, as Grok is over there, the boomers are over there, and my braves are over there. So yeah, we'll see how. That's another shot of his mounted sergeants getting wavered. Here we see the beginning of Kingdoms of Men turn 2. They decide to just basically advance with the knights. I like that movement on the right. I think he angled a little too far though. I don't understand why push that, because if I really wanted to, I could just march with my boomers and be out of line of sight of those knights and just deal with the center knights. I don't really see the point in that. But yeah, he moves up. His wizard rolls back a little bit, getting away from my goblin. But he charges in with the mounted sergeants, the ones that rolled double ones, or I rolled double ones on, and the other ones, the center unit, into one of my units of braves. I'm not worried about that. That's, what, 14 attacks on 7s, and I'm a -15 unit. Yeah. So a bit of a mistake here I think he made was he leapfrogs with the Caterpillar Potion guys over the mounted sergeants that had been wavered. And it's okay, so it's fine to leapfrog. I think that's what chaff do. They just sit in front of you, get wavered, and you walk past them. But he's leapfrogged into charge range of a lot of my units here, and I don't see why you would cede the Alpha Strike when you are faster. So, just personal opinion, I guess. Yeah, you can see. Hold on, let's roll one picture back. Yeah, he ends up charging in. This is his only charge into the Berserker Braves. It doesn't break him. In fact, I think he only does a couple of wounds to him. And then the artillery fire don't hit anything, and otherwise everything just moves forward. Here we can see that this is actually the aftermath of a charge that ended up happening. If you look closely, that mounted sergeant unit in the middle with a 3, that's the unit that he leapfrogged. So right there is where his knights are that leapfrog, and here's what happens afterwards. And that's because he actually opened a flank charge to Grok's Finest to just charge into that unit's flank with a front from the Berserker Braves. Ugh, that, they're just going to get rocked, and rocked they got. I also charged into these 2 mounted sergeants right here with Grok charging into the left, and then the guys with 7 wounds on them, they get countercharged by the Braves. Lastly, I think I moved up with my wizards to get some drain life. I think I actually tried to drain the Banner of the Griffin guy off just because, once he's gone, that's -1 nerve. But it doesn't. Looks like I landed 2 wounds and healed some wounds off the Berserker Braves, I'm gonna guess. You can't really make it out, but on the left there in front of Grok's Finest, I put one of my Goblin Big Gits in front of the Militia Mob, because my idea here is that he'll probably just roll through it and then get the countercharge on Grok's Finest and get a combat anyway, but that requires a lot of dice rolling. He needs a 3 to make it to Grok's Finest after he kills the Goblin, and then he needs a 3 to get to Grok's Finest after he kills the Goblin, and he needs to kill the Goblin in the first place. So I'm just, making my opponent roll dice. Yeah, the Berserker Braves, after they killed the Knights, just advanced forward. They basically stare at that unit. Here, I sent my Goblin. He ended up actually only having a. No, he just stands in front of these knights because he doesn't want them to really. I mean, he's basically going like, you can charge me, which will take you to the right. It's taking you out of the game for another turn, or you can turn around and be helpful. So I gave my opponent the chance. He decides to charge into this Goblin and kills him. The last thing here is that we can see his counter charge, but I actually had the boomers charge into that unit of knights up on the hill because they could snake around once my Goblin got out of the way and the Braves got out of the way. I could actually snake around, clip the corner, and then hit and slide perfectly down. So I'm not sure this was maybe the best idea, but my idea was that I could absorb both the knight charges on the boomers, and then Grok will just wreck house. So, I mean, it's a diversion tactic, and again, I'm just trying to make my opponent roll some dice. Yeah, I actually do waver these knights, if I remember correctly, when I charge them with the boomers, but they pass their headstrong and make it, which is a rule I didn't realize they had. Over here, we can just see the rest of his movement. It's not great. He charges into my Goblin. with the militia mob, and then those guys I think ended up walking up onto the hill, but this is just showing up how the left flank moved. I think I rolled back with the boomers a little bit and, just took some shots into the militia mob on the left, putting, I think, 5 wounds on them, which they're like 27, 29 or some ridiculous amount, so we don't even roll, or I rolled a break to see if I got boxcars. I did not. No more in the warriors. Pivot a bit to face towards the center, just in case that goblin does die. He charges into Grok's Finest. Everything goes south. I need someone to actually be looking over there so I can at least capitalize on the death of, a 250 point unit plus a character. So over here we see the rest of Kingdom's Men movement. He just rolls all up into my face, just, tempting me to get into him. Yep, countercharges the Goblin, charges the Berserker Braves with the the Mounted Sergeants. I got wavered turn 1. And then the Knights go into the Berserker Braves in front of them. And these Knights countercharge into my boomers. I made a bit of a mistake here with my Braves. I'm not sure why I decided to put them so deep into my boomers. If I'd held them back a little bit, because they pursued the amount of sergeants that they killed. If I just held them back, that lets me actually have enough movement to maneuver around. So these Knights charge into Grok, do 5 wounds to him, but they need a 10 to waver him at all, so that doesn't happen. So those Knights are going to meet Grok's killing stick, I think. And over here is just a nightmare for my opponent. This is the end of Ogre turn 3, and what ends up happening is he doesn't even kill the Goblin with the Militia Mob. He, snakes the roll or whatever. It looks like he put 5 wounds on me. So doesn't roll, or he rolled a 4, I think, roll a 4 or 5, so because he does waver him. That's what that blue token is. So I move the Goblin away, and Grok's Finest just charge into that Militia Legion. I'm not expecting them to kill them, but if I get the charge off, I could always get a boxcar, I could always get something crazy, right? It could happen. I countercharge with the Berserker Braves in the middle, the guys with 4 wounds on them, and they easily killed the Mounted Sergeants, and then pivot to look towards the Militia Legion that's fighting Grok's Finest. Grok himself countercharges the Knights in front of them and just blows them out of the water. I think I have it written down here. Yeah, he ends up doing 18 wounds or something like that. It was crazy. Just wrecks them. Over here, I charge with the Boomers and the Warriors into the, if we walk back 2 pictures, they charge into the, what are those, Berserkers or what are Barbarians in the center, that horde. They both charge there because I'm not taking, why would I do a 1-in-1 charge? That's not very good. So I just charge them both in there, and Nomar gives one of them Vicious, I believe the Warriors, because they hit on a 3. And they easily just delete that unit. I think you can see the wounds. They did, 19 wounds to that unit. Oof, bad. So, roll into them. Over here on the right, we can see, I'm sorry, let's walk one back for a second. Something special does happen here, which is Grok's Finest do not that many wounds to that Legion of Militia. But then I boxcar the roll, so they're wavered and can't charge me back, which is, this flank is mine. My opponent, that Legion of Militia there on the left would have to get some pretty crazy rolls to fix this problem. So yeah, he countercharges, or not countercharges, he charges into my horde of Boomers there. This was sort of that Village Idiot again concept where if they die, I think the Warriors get a great charge into them. If they are fine, then I get a combo charge. The only thing I messed up here was that if they get wavered, they can't get out of the way of the Warriors, so bit of a mistake by me there. This is just showing off Grok obliterates those Knights, just wrecks them, and he sends the Knights into my Boomers there on the right, but he doesn't actually do anything to them. I mean, he does some wounds, but he doesn't kill them. So here we're showing off the Grok's Finest going back into the Militia Mob. I think that's showing off the boxcar roll they got. And here, this is my opponent's turn 5, and it is very bad. All those wounds there, that's on the Boomers. He gets, a flank charge with the Knights that fought that Goblin Big Gid on the right. They killed him off screen, don't worry about that. So they killed that Goblin, charge into the flank of the Boomers, and end up getting, 28 wounds onto him with both Knight units. Puts 28 wounds onto me, and snakes the roll. So, Unfortunate. Grok charges into the flank of the unit on the hill, excuse me, while the boomers countercharge into the unit that charged them on the right. I send my Goblin Bigot, who was wavered, into his BSB because he's got 2 or 3 wounds on him right now, and he could do it. Grok's Finest charges into the front while the excuse me, Berserker Braves charge into the flank of that militia mob in the center, or militia mob. He does end up wavering the boomers on the left there with 6 wounds, so that's an unfortunate turnabout for me, but I'm winning so hard in the center that I don't think it's really relevant. I move my wizards around to drain life that individual, maybe get some heals going, but in reality I just need to put 1 wound through with my goblin to make it all worth it. And yep, my Grok easily obliterates that unit on the hill. My Goblin Big Get gets pretty lucky and ends up killing off the Banner of the Griffin BSB. Grok's Finest plus the Berserker Braves kill off the Militia Mob and Militia Legion, and the Legion over there on the left kills off the Boomers on their charge. But and then it looks like the Boomers with 28 wounds don't kill the Knights that charge on the flank, and actually do waver them though. The Knights think that they're going to charge back. I remind my opponent that he's wavered, has to roll his Headstrong. He fails it, but fortunately that Wizard is there with Lightning Bolt 3 to just get 1 pip of damage in, and they're gone. So my turn 6, we see, I don't know if there's, oh yes, there is another picture. Yeah, my turn 6, I turn back towards the center. Grok's Finest and those warriors are within the Militia Legion in both charge, kill them off, and the Ogres just sort of stare down on a basically dead board. I send one of my goblins forward with 5 wounds on him just to maybe get, a last turn charge if we got to turn 7. And there's no more pictures, but we did roll it. We got turn 7. I think its artillery end up hitting Grok's Finest and putting some wounds on them, but doesn't break them. That dash looks like they're dash 19 because they're in range of, or dash 20 because they're in range of Banner of the Griffin. But I charge in with a goblin onto one of the siege artillery, and then I lightning bolt the other 2 and just wipe everything out. On top of getting, I might have even got a Grok, either Grok or Drain Lifed the Wizard, and killed them as well. So this ends up being a pretty tasty 19-point victory for the Ogres. So I'm feeling pretty good, pretty good about the tournament so far. I've got 35 points out of a possible 60. Pretty center of the road, but now I push myself above that center line. So I hope you enjoy. If you saw anything or you want to comment, feel free to leave them below. Thanks. Bye.